so excited. It's called Hearts of Stars, and it's similar in the sense that to Dark Side, which sounds weird, but the lens is different. But my focus with Hearts of Stars is to allow the celebrities that we see, whether it's TV, film, theater, whatever it is, and what is close to their heart. So what organizations, what passion projects, what other businesses they have, topics that aren't talked about, that maybe things that they're going through. And so that is the main focus of the podcast.
I want to welcome you to one of the most powerful episodes of the Media from the Heart that I have had the opportunity to record. My name is Ruth Hill, and I am your host. And today I want to bring to you a conversation I was honored to have with the remarkable and incredible filmmaker, mother, wife, podcaster, and so much more, Jennifer Silliman. We did a deep dive into her early life, why she wanted to get involved in film and TV, and her Hallmark and Christmas obsession, her podcasts, a little bit about being a wife and a mother, but we really dug deep, and I mean deep and powerful, into postpartum depression. This woman is a survivor extraordinaire, and she didn't hold back anything. So sit back, open your mind, open your heart, and listen to this woman's message, who I believe has something for women in every season of life, no matter where you may find yourself.
Well, it is so wonderful to be back for another episode of Media from the Heart. My name is Ruth Hill, and I am your host. And what a joy. Not only do I have a virtual audience, but of course, I have a wonderfully talented and just beautiful guest with me today. Her name is Jennifer Silliman, and I would like to just read a little brief introduction about her. I have some really exciting stuff that we'll talk about. Jennifer Silliman is a survivor of postpartum depression and anxiety. This experience led her to produce the first American documentary addressing motherhood and mental illness called Dark Side of the Full Moon. Because she silently suffered with her symptoms around the holidays, Jennifer was unable to enjoy them and credits those amazing Hallmark movies for bringing the Christmas joy back into her life. Jennifer was born and raised in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. She graduated from Millersville University with a Bachelor of Science degree in speech communications with concentrations in broadcasting, interpersonal communications, communication theories, and cultural studies. She now resides in Palm Beach County, Florida, with her husband, William, and daughter, Allison. Well, so she is a very qualified. She probably should be the one be doing this for a living. But we'll see. But that's great. I mean, man, that's some incredible stuff. I appreciate so much, Jennifer, that you were so open in what you shared, even in just when I asked you to do this bio. You actually you jumped on board. Like right after I started asking for people who might want to be podcast guests, you jumped on so quickly.
I did.
And so all of that together, I just want to welcome you and thank you so much for coming and being a guest on my podcast.
Of course. Thank you. I know who you've interviewed, so I feel really honored to be on this platform. I'm so excited to share my story. I'm really passionate about storytelling. I know it can help people. Stories can transform lives, the people that hear them and the people that tell them. So I'm really excited to share today.
That's good. I'm so glad. Well, what I love about your story, and I know there's probably a whole lot more to it, but as far as postpartum depression goes, and of course that being something that you experienced and you went through, and then as a result of it, you have a documentary that you created. And that really interested me because it was just last week, I believe, I was watching a TED Talk from the showrunner of Working Moms. Now, I don't know if you know about the show Working Moms. Have you heard about that show?
I've heard of it, yes.
Okay. And so it was a TED Talk, and she went through something where she was experiencing postpartum depression, and that's why she has this now sitcom that Canada actually picked up, but now it's available. I think it's available on the streaming service. I don't remember which one. But that interested me because I just heard somebody talk about it. And here I have a podcast guest who has experienced it, and you put together a documentary as a result. So why don't I let you tell us your story? I'll just kind of let you open up and share what you want to about, or maybe what first inspired you when you were growing up to get involved in like film or broadcasting. Why don't we start there?
Sure, we can start there. I don't think anyone's ever asked me to start there before, so I'm actually really excited.
Good,
it usually starts with my not so fun experience with postpartum depression, and so yeah, let's go back to when I was a child. I always wanted to be around famous people, and that's going to probably sound extremely weird, but I loved the feeling of being starstruck. I just thought it to be amazing that the people on the square TV also had lives outside of what they were doing, right? And it's kind of like when you were in school and you saw your teacher like at the grocery store, and you're like, that's weird. Like, I just thought they were always in the classroom. Like, it's just like that weird kind of thing. So, I knew that I wanted to do something with television. I would do little newscasts and, write little scripts. And, that was, so I kind of knew at a really young age that I wanted to be somewhere in the entertainment industry. So yeah, I went to school for broadcasting. I went to a local state school. So I commuted back and forth from home. So I did not live on campus. I worked full time at our local news station the entire time I was in school, which was nice. It was also kind of frustrating a little bit because I was doing the work. And then kind of when you have professors that have never really been in a studio before, I was like going, nope, that's not what happens when you're in a newsroom. So I was that student, that people would come to be like, so what really happens over there at the news station? So I worked in news locally for about 4 years. And then our station was picked up by Hearst Argyle at the time. And we had a local nature show that was a reoccurring spot on our local news that actually got picked up to be nationally syndicated. And so I went to work on that show as a production coordinator. And that's kind of where I was like, I love this, going on like, out in the middle of, I don't know, some zoo. I mean, it was a wild nature show. So we had all kinds of animals in our office, like all the time, but it was fun to do like crowd control, and like the fans would come up and want to like see the host because he was like a local celebrity. And so I would manage all of that. And I loved it. I loved every piece of it. And so I ended up moving to Florida in 2003, got a job at a local news station down here. But if anyone's familiar with news, you know that when you kind of move to different markets, if you're not on the camera, you're likely starting at the bottom again. So I'm like, oh my gosh, how many years can I be a teleprompter operator? This is like, I need to survive, and my paycheck is not allowing me to do that. Even though I loved it so much. So I got out of news and went into marketing and advertising, which was quite a jump. And then left there because I wanted to start a family. Advertising is very cutthroat. I mean, the hours are, forget about it. I mean, and it was quite a drive. I was driving to Fort Lauderdale every day. It was just a lot. So, and my husband and I were married, and I'm like, I really want to start a family. And the only way that's going to happen is if I find a different job that's 9 to 5 and a lot closer to home. So that's what we did. And and that kind of takes us right up to starting a family and kind of what happened? Do you want me to just keep continuing, or is that okay? Or do you have a question?
I'm just going to jump in and say one thing. It does not sound strange that you wanted to be around famous people and that you enjoyed being around famous people, because when I was growing up, I was absolutely obsessed with Hollywood, and especially old Hollywood. My mom's on my mom is in the audience, and I can hear her already as like,
yes,
she's
I see her going, yeah.
And so I don't think it's strange. It doesn't sound presumptuous. It's just you were fascinated, and correct me if I'm wrong, it wasn't so much. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that they were just like quote unquote famous people, but you were actually genuinely interested in them and their stories, and it was and what they did for a living. Am I right?
Yes, you are absolutely correct. I love the whole art, that whole art of, I love every facet of what it takes to make a film. That has always been I always had a strong interest about that. And in fact, it's so funny you bring it up, because before I moved to Florida, so I was 23 when I moved. So about 21, 22, I was still working for the nature show. I applied to be an intern on the David Letterman show. Never went through with it because I was a small town girl who didn't think she would make it in New York City, didn't know anybody in New York City. I couldn't, I didn't do it. And I kicked myself for it. And then I applied through the Directors Guild of America, the assistant directors program. Was so close to going to LA for my in-person interview and just didn't do it. So, I mean, we all have those regrets when we look and go, oh my gosh, if I was, the person then that I am now, I would have jumped on that plane and I would have been gone. Exactly. But I have had the privilege of doing so many amazing things and working with so many amazing people that I wouldn't have met otherwise, really, through the newsroom, and then through my experience with postpartum depression and making this documentary film, which had always been my dream to see my name on the credits on the big screen. Yeah. And I remember the first time seeing my name in the credits on the big screen, and I just crumbled because this is it. Like this is what I want. I wanted to see that. It was just, I don't know why, I just wanted that. And not only was it a piece of work that I was in, that I produced, that I blood, sweat, and tears, but it was a story that I knew was going to change the lives of women, moms, families, dads, children, doctors. And that's what made me I got goosebumps just talking about it. I mean, that's what made me so super proud that I knew it was going to make an impact for a really long time. So I'm very open, obviously, about my entire experience. Yeah. But I'll give you the abridged version, really. Go for it. When I got pregnant, everything was okay with my pregnancy. I had a high risk pregnancy. I was put on bed rest closer to the end. Knew I was going to have a cesarean. It wasn't going to be safe for me to have, a typical birth. So I ended up having some complications, and we had a scheduled C-section, which was totally fine. But she actually came 6 weeks early. And it was a very traumatic experience. I had to be taken by ambulance from my home, and it was just really traumatic. But 3 months prior, I guess I just don't remember the exact day. It was in August. So she was born in October. So I was still pregnant. It's August. And I started having these really strange, thoughts in my head, scary thoughts. And now I know they're called intrusive thoughts. And I didn't know what they were at the time, but they're just weird things that are not great. And I'm not going to go into detail about those, but they just were really, debilitating and really scary. And I had been to childbirth education classes, and nobody talked about what that was. So I thought I must be going crazy because no one talks about this stuff. So I'm certainly not going to bring it up. People are going to think I'm nuts. So I actually hid kind of everything I was going through August, September, and then October. She was supposed to be born November 13th and she came October 9th. Again, taken by a very traumatic birth experience. It was not the birth experience that I thought I was going to have at all. And she ended up in the NICU for 10 days. She had some complications. And, you know, I remember being in the hospital and not having anyone address the fact that that was the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me in my life. And because it was all about the baby. It was like I had disappeared and then she was in the NICU. She was the biggest baby in the NICU. She was completely fine. She had aspirated when she came out. So they just want to make sure it was okay. She stayed in there for 10 days. And I think it was because she was the biggest baby in the NICU and that there really weren't any other complications, that there should be no reason why I feel anything but happy. And what people didn't know is that I was suffering with a lot of debilitating anxiety, depression, intrusive thoughts. It was just really scary. And then to have that traumatic experience of being taken by, I had never been in an ambulance before. Like, I don't, that was really scary. I didn't know what was going on, and nobody addressed that trauma because it showed up later and no one had addressed it. And so then I ultimately suffered for 3 months postpartum. And I thought, oh, maybe this will just eventually go away. I'm very A-type personality, Post-it notes galore and lists, and I can get through this. Like, I can fix this by myself. I don't need anybody. I'm going to be so busy with being a mom. This is just going to go away. Definitely did not go away. It got progressively worse. I was unable to function as a mom, a person, even. So finally, like 2 days before my 30th birthday, I finally told my husband what was going on. And this is all documented in the film. And so I ultimately was diagnosed with pregnancy and postpartum obsessive compulsive disorder with anxiety and intrusive thoughts. And I was put on medication. And luckily, I'm so lucky and blessed that the first medication that they tried with me worked. And I had relief within 3 days. And that is not a very common story. Sometimes it takes a while for meds to kick in. Sometimes meds don't even work. Like, I've heard millions of stories on my other podcast that I do called Dark Side of the Full Moon. I've been doing that for 2 seasons, and these moms come and I give them the platform to share whatever they want to about their story. And I've heard this story over and over again. And so for me, medication worked. I'm a proponent of any treatment that you think. I just want everyone to be well. Like, it doesn't matter to me what path that is for you. For me, it was medication. It worked pretty instantly. I started feeling better and I was able to kind of work through all the other things, the trauma and all that other stuff that ultimately happened and that wasn't addressed. Right as I was, so what they do is then they taper you off your medication because, if it was just because of that occurrence, we don't need to keep you on it. Let's try and taper you off. It took 3 times, but I was able to get off my medication in 2012. And within like 3 days of going off of medication, my daughter ended up being diagnosed with autism. And it was something that I thought, oh goodness, this is going to send me back into some sort of something. It didn't. I totally engulfed myself in the autism world. It was something I never knew about. And so I read every book. I called every therapist. I joined every Facebook group. I did everything I, could. And it kind of took my mind off of all that other stuff going on. Well, it turns out that my daughter is on the autism spectrum. She has really great behaviors. And we had a therapist start coming to our house, and the therapist was like, hey, somebody wants to film your daughter for a training video for other therapists. She has such great behavior. It would be a really good opportunity for other therapists to see this. Sure, no problem. Like, I'm all about helping others. So bring on the camera crew. Well, the camera crew was one lady who showed up at my house who ends up being the woman that I make my documentary film with.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And it was just like the stars aligned. And I mean, I had never met her before. Mm-hmm. And she wanted to film me for some things. And she's like, oh, you're so good on camera. You talk in sound bites. Like, it's so good. I said, well, I went to school for broadcasting, so I know exactly what you're probably looking for. Yeah. So I'm trying to make this process easier for you, so you don't have all these things to do in the editing room. And I said, I also love public speaking. I love talking in front of large groups of people. More the people, the better. I just love it. And I said, I run a postpartum depression support group locally for moms. And she said, oh my goodness, I had been wanting to make a documentary film about my own experience for like 3 years. And I was like, let's do it. She was at my house the next week. This was, I have goosebumps just thinking about it. This was like probably a week before Thanksgiving. By the beginning, like right before Christmas, we had the whole outline storyboarded out. We knew exactly who we wanted to interview, and we went with it. And a year and a half later, we had a finished documentary film that was 75 minutes long. And because we were so passionate about just getting the information out, we want it to be a great film, but it needs to be out there like right now, because there's women that are suffering and we don't want them to go through what we did. So let's just get this out. And we did. And it was like birthing another baby. Yeah. Making a film is tough stuff. It's not easy. It's a lot of flying around the country and finding a couch to sleep on and packing your equipment and wrapping them in yoga mats and putting them in suitcases. I mean, that's what we did.
Goodness. Wow. Oh, Jennifer, you shared so much, which I almost don't even know where to begin. There's so much I could say, but
sorry, I know. It tends to be multifaceted.
Oh, no. Do not apologize. One thing I want to say that I keep coming back to, that I kept hearing so much of your story, you just jumped in and did things, and you've made these things happen. It wasn't like you said, oh, I might do that sometime, or this would be a nice idea. But it's like the opportunity's there and you just jump in and do it. And that is so great to see. And it probably explains in some ways, maybe even why you were able to, that medicine, once you were able to come to terms with what was going on with your body, you got the treatment, why it works so quickly. I mean, I think I'm not going to say, I don't know all of the details, but I do think there's something about that. You didn't just sit there and continue to suffer in silence. You realize, okay, I've got to do something about this. It took you a while to come. I understand, because I think traditionally postpartum depression has not been taken seriously. And I think even in this day, there's still, I think it's better, but I think there is still sometimes that stigma that people want to attach to it. Oh, it's all in your mind and all that. So.
Of course. I mean, mental illness is one thing, but when you attach it to becoming a mom or being a mom, and it's supposed to be like the most celebrated part of a woman's life. I mean, at least that's what we're shown and what we're taught. And when it's not that way for you, you think maybe you weren't meant to be a mom. You start second guessing, like maybe this wasn't for me. I just saw a little thing that it's a taboo subject. Oh, I mean, they weren't even talking about. So here's a funny little tidbit for you. So I had started those support groups, and I was like, and moms were showing up in droves to the local library to share their experience. It was so, I mean, it took me back, because I really was like, I'm going to be the only one sitting in this room for like the first few months until people start to learn that this group exists. Oh no. First night, 7 people showed up. Oh, and here, okay. So I have two stories for you. The first one, my very, very first support group, I'm sitting there and I'm sharing my story. And I shared my story about how medicine helped me. It's not for everybody, but it helped me. And so that was my treatment plan. Long story short, the woman stops me in the parking lot and says, "Would you mind telling me what kind of medication you were put on? Because I have the exact same symptoms that you talked about." And I said, "Well, I don't typically share what medicine I'm on, but I'm going to just tell you." And I told her, and she goes, "I have a prescription for that in my purse that I have not filled yet, but I'm going to go fill it right now because I read about it." She Googled searched it. And lucky for me, my psychiatrist knew me and was like, and said, "I know you're going to go home and Google search this, and here's what you're going to find." Right. So she kind of, to prevent what happened to this other woman. And she got better. And so that's when I knew I need to share my story with as many people as possible. How can I make that happen? And it just so happened that my dear friend Maureen showed up in my house to film my daughter, and we ended up being film partners. And I'm a true believer that things like that don't just happen. I mean, that was meant to be. And it was just, I have no regrets, none at all about, and I even had my own therapist say, "You better be careful who you share your story with, because, it could hurt you in getting a job. It could hurt you with," I said, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "I am going to stand on the tallest mountain that I can find, and I am going to scream it as loud as I can." And hence that's the documentary film. Because I knew when that woman stopped me in the parking lot, I said, "Oh my gosh, my story is that powerful. Yeah. It's that powerful. I have to share it." And so that's what I did. And that's what I do now, allowing people to share their story on my other podcast.
Right. Wow. So this film, was this then, did it go to film festivals? Is it available somewhere for people to watch?
Yeah, it did go to film festivals. That was really exciting. Yeah. We won a couple awards here at local awards, which is really great, because we were all about just getting it to as many people as we possibly could. However, films are not cheap to make. So I was like, "Oh, how are we going to we had a lot of, in-kind donations, which was great, but we still had some expenses. So, we actually hooked up with a distributor, they're unfortunately not around anymore, but they were great because they would allow people to rent our film and screen it into their community, and they could charge people a ticket price, and then they could use that money for a nonprofit in their community, or to start a support group, or whatever they wanted to do. So essentially we still do that now, just without that third party. I do it now, and we don't send out DVDs anymore. Thank goodness. We have, like most people have, the technology capabilities that we don't have to physically ship out DVDs. We can, but it's mostly just, it is on Real House and Vimeo. Okay. And so what I can do, I can give you the link to that. To rent it, it's $10. You rent it for $10. We have people that do purchase it. I think it's $150, and that allows them to screen it as many times as they want to. Because if they want to do their own screenings in their own communities, that's what they end up doing. So, but with that being said, we started getting calls from, different universities, medical schools, military bases. And they were like, "We need this film. Like, we need to show doctors what happens when women are not screened for postpartum depression." And so the film is not for pregnant women. The film is really dramatic. It's a bit graphic, and it's very triggering. I mean, the stories are very triggering for people to hear that have maybe had an experience and have not been treated for it. And so there is a disclaimer, before everything, but we wanted what we wanted our film to do is to make people angry. We wanted people to be angry that, 1 in 5 women are going to suffer from something that nobody is screening. So, we always compared it to gestational diabetes, where every woman who gets pregnant drinks the sugary drink or eats the Snickers bar and then has the blood work done to see if they have gestational diabetes, right?
Yeah.
Not many women have gestational diabetes. And so we're like, oh, and then we said, you know what, keep testing them. For that, I forget how long you have to sit in the office. It's like a while, it's like an hour or something, and then you get your blood work done. Why don't we, at that time, share information about postpartum depression? So that, put it on the back of the bottle. I don't know, do something, a video, or some literature. Right. So we wanted practitioners to get mad, and through our film we really learned that OBGYNs are not trained, pediatricians are not trained. There is no coursework in dealing with any sort of mental illness onset from being pregnant or after delivering a baby. So nobody was trained, doulas, nobody was just trained in it. And so finally getting things like postpartum depression in the DSM, which is like basically the book that lists every single illness you can think of, and it has a little code by it, and that little code is what allows practitioners to get refunded for treating you for something. If it's not in there, they're not going to screen you for it. They're not going to talk about it because they don't get a kickback. It's, and not to mention that mental illness is really scary. And who wants to talk to somebody about it if they're not trained on how to do so? And even if you're trained to do so, what if this mom says, yeah, I haven't been feeling like myself? Well, now you need a place to send her. Well, if you don't have a place to send her, you're surely not going to talk about it. Right. So there's kind of all these different facets that if they're not all aligned, if even just one is missing, that mom's not going to be addressed, and she's going to fall through the cracks. And, it's sad because it's so treatable. It's so treatable. But it's just, the taboo word, absolutely. It's stigmatized. Moms don't want to talk about it. Other moms don't talk about it. Like I didn't have any friends who were pregnant that ever told me any of that. Yeah. And so, and you think, well, my friends tell me everything. No, they don't. So my friends didn't tell me after the fact, like I heard your story and I went through the kind of the same thing. And it's just like, we got to start telling other moms. We got to just start talking about it, because I felt so much better when I knew other moms were going, had gone or were going through the same thing. I didn't feel ashamed. I had no, you feel like, ugh, I shouldn't have been a mom. And that's a terrible feeling. But I'm all better.
That's good.
I'm all better now.
No, that's great. No, and it's so true. I think that it goes for anything, any mental illness, any condition. Any condition that is not out there. There are the conditions that are popular to talk about. Everybody can talk about having diabetes, or they can talk about even being overweight, or they can talk about so many different things that they can talk about. But when it comes to any kind of mental illness, I think there still is that. And then you even take it a step further. While moms are supposed to, it's all about, like you said, it's all about the baby. It's not about, it's like that's what we need to focus on. Mom's going to be fine. She's going to be just fine. And we need to focus on the baby. And I think it's true. Any of those kinds of conditions, you feel like you're all alone. I shouldn't be feeling this way. This isn't right. And so you start judging yourself, and then you feel like you're all alone and nobody else experiences it. But once you reach out and you say, I really am struggling, and then it's like, then it becomes okay to share. It becomes like, and so how great that these doors were opened for you to have this documentary, to be able to create this documentary, and you have support groups, all these things, and hopefully there will come the day when it is more or less taboo to talk about. It's more open. People are more open about it. And it's people like you who are going to bring that about. I see you as a trailblazer. I see that.
Thank you. Yeah. And people often ask, what do you want to have become of your film? And I said, I want the thing to become obsolete. Like, we shouldn't have to show this film. We should just be like, I wish I could say, oh my gosh, remember a time when moms were like never screened for like depression and it was like 1 in 5 were experiencing it. And, like, I don't want it I want it to be obsolete. Goodbye, dark side of the full moon. We don't need you anymore. We are all good. Like we have changed it culturally that we are taking care of moms because they deserve to be taken care of. Exactly. And and it's just that's what we hope. I mean, that's truly what we hope happens.
Exactly.
So
yeah, this is the only documentary. Is this the only film that you've made? Is that right?
Yes, this is the only film that I've done. Hopefully not the last, but the only documentary that I've done so far. Yes.
Right. Okay, that's it. Yeah, I like the fact that you're saying hopefully not the only one. It's your first and it's not the last. It's not going to be the last.
I really hope so. I really hope so. But yeah, I'm happy to talk about the Hallmark connection.
Yeah, definitely.
So what happens when you experience anything that's really traumatic? Your senses really pick up on everything. Okay. So like a good example would be, people that are in like a car accident, when they get close to that intersection where it happened, or even just getting into a car again, can be really, really hard. Your senses pick up, a smell reminds you of something, a sound, something. So when I was dealing with all of my postpartum issues that I wasn't addressing, it was November. It was Thanksgiving time. I knew my daughter was going to be born in November. I was so excited to have her first Christmas experience so early. Like I knew we weren't going to be able to buy her gifts and stuff because that would have just been silly. But it was like, I can just, I had, visions of like the Christmas tree light, like glowing and holding her in her cute little Christmas outfit, my first Christmas. I mean, we had the onesie, we had the whole thing. And I was so debilitated by what I was going through that I just couldn't enjoy it. And so I got better, but that next Christmas was really hard for me. I got extremely anxious. All of that trauma came back. I didn't know how to deal with it. Like I really just wasn't given the proper tools to know. I mean, I didn't even know it was going to happen. And so I didn't even address it with any of my practitioners because I thought I'm better. Like I can't wait for Christmas and Thanksgiving. Like, so, it just didn't work out that way. And so what I was able to do, people with anxiety, one of the common traits, at least for the people that I speak with, when you're talking about entertainment and what you watch on television, is that a lot of people with anxiety tend to watch the same things over and over again, simply because they know what to expect, right? And so the beauty with, for me, it was Hallmark, at the time. For me, I knew what to expect. I knew that there was going to be a love interest and maybe an animal, and some snow and a little conflict, nothing too bad. A little misunderstanding. And then within 5 minutes of that show ending, they were going to kiss and it was going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And so I literally threw myself into the Hallmark Channel and into those films. And it literally rewired my brain to love Christmas again. I mean, it did. Watching that and just having those images come through and feeling what they were feeling on screen through, I could feel that. We feel that when we watch movies, like we get the same sort of feeling and emotion. And it helped me. I mean, it really, truly did help me. And so I could match Christmas with film. And so when I would watch those films again, that's the feelings I would feel, not the anxiety, not the memories of what had happened to me and my family. And it just, it literally, I can't even tell you. I mean, I don't know if Bill Abbott's going to watch this, but that man and that network at the time changed my world. I mean, it really, and I know I'm not the only one that this happens to, and maybe
Right.
not as as dramatic as it did for me, but people lose themselves in these films because they want to. I mean, they need something else. And for me, it was movies. I couldn't, I mean, people kept saying, read a book. And my anxiety was so bad that I couldn't read the book and hear my own voice in my head. Like that was too hard for me. Like I needed someone to talk to me, maybe an audiobook would have worked, but they weren't real big at the time. So I was like, no, watching this and feeling this and then starting to incorporate senses, right? Sense of Christmas. So pine tree, like it was amazing how many things would trigger me. But it totally rewired myself just really through watching movies that I knew were happy and what to expect. And it totally changed my trajectory on how I would feel about Christmas again. And it sounds so like weird, but it's so true, like 100% true. And it's what happened. And I am so grateful.
No, it does not. First of all, no, it does not sound strange at all, because I hear lots of stories similar. There are people who have really begun to cling to Hallmark movies as a result of the pandemic.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you have all these homebound people, and Hallmark becomes like almost a friend and a comfort during this time. And you have people who are recovering from surgeries, and that's all they watch. They watch the Hallmark movies, and they watch the Hallmark Channel, and so it totally makes sense, because it's just so positive and uplifting. And I love, and I think it also makes sense just because that's been a part of who you are. Film, television, all that has been such a part of your life. It only makes sense that that's going to be what speaks to you, what ends up helping you. And I love how you said that you began to associate the positive emotions with Christmas. So you fell in love with Christmas again, and I love that. So it doesn't sound strange at all. I'm with you, because I used to not watch Hallmark because I didn't think it was cool, and if my dad liked Hallmark, then I wasn't going to like Hallmark, and I soon learned that I was wrong as I threw myself into Hallmark movies and Hallmark shows, and so I understand that you have the one podcast you've mentioned that I'm assuming came out of your documentary. You have
Yes.
your documentary, and then now you have that particular podcast. I understand that you have a new podcast. Yeah.
I'm so excited. It's called Hearts of Stars, and it's similar in the sense that to Dark Side, which sounds weird, but the lens is different. But my focus with Hearts of Stars is to allow the celebrities that we see, whether it's TV, film, theater, whatever it is, and what is close to their heart. So what organizations, what passion projects, what other businesses they have, topics that aren't talked about, that maybe things that they're going through. And so that is the main focus of the podcast. We touch a little bit on projects that people may have seen them in or what's coming up, but it's not the main focus. And so far, everyone has been really excited to be able to talk about those things. Yeah. I know, giving a platform, certainly my platform's not that big, but they have big platforms. And so I want to be able to pull that information out of them and post it so that people can hear it from them, these things that are just so, they're more than just kind of, and I think we all know that they're much more than what we just see, on screen. And so many of them are activists and very involved in their community. And that really, really interests me. And so my goal for 2022 was to do a podcast that was lighter than what I was doing. Dark Side of the Full Moon can be very heavy. Yeah, necessary, but very heavy. And I love being in the company of artists. And so I said, you know what, let's try this. It took me about 2 months to come up with a name. And I love that you have hearts in yours too. I'm feeling like heart love. I'm like, yes, Media from the Heart, Hearts of Stars. Like, this is all very good stuff. So yeah, I'm really excited. My first guest is Jax Collier, which was great because I listened to the whole interview when she interviewed you. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have so much fun talking to Ruth. I am just so excited. So Jax is my first guest, and she's a hoot. Like, it's really, really funny. So yeah, I'm really excited.
Oh, good. No, that's exciting. I'm glad because I saw the announcement that a new podcast was coming. I did see that. And I was like, oh, and I'm getting to interview her, and she's got the podcast coming. So that's exciting. And I love that because I have always, for as long as I've been interviewing actors, I've always wanted to make sure to say what charity are they passionate about? What cause are they passionate about? And they don't always get the opportunity to do that. In fact, there's a story I still have. Now, this goes back way back really now to when I was first doing these interviews. If you've ever seen Murdoch Mysteries, which is, I know, a Canadian show, but it's been big. And then if you've ever seen Aurora Teagarden, this guy was on there as well, Yannick Besson. And I had the opportunity to interview him once, and it's never worked out again. But I will never forget that I asked him about charities. And when I sent him the interview, he's like, that's so great that you included the charities, because most of the time they don't include it. I put the stuff there and nobody includes it. And so he thanked me, and he remembered. I mean, it's like he remembered that interview. Even though it didn't work out for us to do another interview, he remembered that. And so it was so there is something to be said about actors, industry professionals really want to have that place where they can talk about these causes that are important to their hearts. And not every journalist wants to ask them that. They want to say, well, what was it like working with so and so, or what was it? All those things. Was it cool to work with Danica McKellar?
Right. And don't get me wrong, I want all that information too.
Yeah. Right.
I love it. Like, I'm a behind the scenes junkie. Like, I love watching behind the scenes of how this was made, and I'm all about it. But I think it's called #Giving Tuesday or something they do on social media. And that really inspired me too, to be like, you know what, because all these actors and that I follow on Instagram were posting all this stuff, about the things that are so close to their heart. And I was like, I want to be able to have them share their story if they want to. And so that's kind of a little bit, where it came from. So yeah, I'm super excited for it. So yeah, well, I mean, we'll see where it goes. And, it's all about helping them elevate the message, as many times, and talk about it as much as they can, and fundraise or have people volunteer, or, whatever the cause may be, or even just passion project. A lot of these stars have, other businesses that they do, which are, really incredible as well. So
definitely. So I know I have people here who would like to ask questions. I can tell you right now. Let's see, Kelly.
So my question is, because I mean, I don't obviously have postpartum depression because I have no children, but I do suffer from clinical depression and have for many years. How did you deal with it? Like, just, I don't know, because I'm on medication, but how do you deal with it all the time? Like,
right. A lot of people don't know that even when you're being treated for it, the symptoms can still be there. And that can be really frustrating. Yeah. So what I used to tell, and this is for anybody can do this, but we would make and it sounds kind of silly, but like a self-care box, and it doesn't have to be a box. It can just be a place where you have all of these items. And so the reverse of being traumatized by things is recreating, a different feeling from whatever it is. So I look at the 5 senses. Okay. So you want to find something that you like to listen to, something that you like to smell, something that you like to taste, something that you like to see, and and touch. I always forget touch. Something that you like to touch. And so for a while, I love Christmas. So if I'm feeling down, I don't care if it's June, I have a spruce fir tree candle thing that I'm burning because I love Christmas. Again, yay. So I smell those things, right? I have a blanket that I love. It is my blanket. It is nobody else's blanket. I curl up with that. There are certain songs that I like to listen to, not like meditation calming sounds, like 80s fun dance music. And put that on, it totally changes my world. So those are really the things that are instantaneous, right? They're I'm just not feeling you wake up and you're just not feeling yourself. Put on some music, light a candle. What's your favorite smell? What's your favorite candy? I mean, I can pop a lollipop in my mouth and feel like a kid again. I mean, those are the kinds of things that can change you in an instant. These aren't things to treat, obviously, depression and clinical depression. These are to treat symptoms in the moment, which are so frustrating and continue to happen and they still happen to me. So that's what I do. I like really focus on my senses, and it can really change. I mean, all of us have smelled something and it's taken us back to, oh my gosh, that smells like,
a memory,
kindergarten or, whatever, hopefully a good memory. So you want all of those senses to be associated and tied to a good memory so that you can kind of like refocus your thinking. So I hope that's helpful. That's what I tell everybody.
Yeah. Well, I know one thing that helped me is 2 years ago, I got a cat. Oh. And she's always on me. Like, she's not now. She just was for half.
I saw her earlier. I saw her. I'm a cat person too. So,
but she's a really loving cat, and she just comes up and she purrs and she snuggles, and I find she just calms me.
Yeah, that's why support animals are a thing. I'm telling you. I mean, dogs, cats, anything really that just is able to. And cats, I don't know about you, but my cat senses when I'm not feeling great.
Yeah,
and
she does. Yeah.
Crawl on you, and just the weight of them can be. Weighted blankets are also very good, by the way.
I do have a weighted blanket too, actually. Yeah.
Awesome. But yeah, I mean, having an animal show you affection is like the best thing ever. I mean, it really does. It does help for sure.
Yeah, I call her my BFF.
Well, I mean, cats are the best BFFs. Yes, I think that's fantastic. Sometimes better than real human BFFs. So
they're always there and they always listen.
Always there, no judgment. Yeah. Good. Oh, there she is. Oh, I love it. Oh, she looks just like my Kiki cat. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Oh, that was amazing. Well, thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you, Jennifer. That was like a great response. I had you put it in such a way that, and it's something that's not just for someone suffering from postpartum depression. That could be, honestly, even if you're not suffering from depression, if you're just having a bad day, have something. If you just are going through something, challenge it. I love that you talked about recreating your environment. I love that. I absolutely love that.
Bro.
But here's Timmy. I know Timmy said that she had a question.
Sure.
I always have questions. So the last 2 years were quite hard, quite difficult for many people. And I was just wondering if you noticed a spike in the number of people who reached out to you about the postpartum depression for advice. And
Absolutely.
Alter what you told them, what kind of advice you gave them.
Yeah, it's a really, because the COVID blanket over new moms and women who were becoming pregnant during COVID was something that there was no blueprint for that. It's unheard of that you can't have anyone come with you to your OB appointment, to your delivery. I mean, those kinds of things are unheard of. And so really just encouraging them to find the support wherever they can, because these were not rules that we could break. I mean, it was black and white. You cannot have this person. You can have one person come with you. For a while in the beginning, it was no one. I mean, you were given birth with your doctors and your nurse, and that's it. So it's tough, and there's going to be an entire generation of children and new moms and families who have experienced this, and they're going to need support. And so I encourage them to really be truthful and feel those feelings, but get help for them. And the sooner the better, because, when you're not treated for things like this, they'll come back. Something will happen and they will come back. And so, we have to learn the proper ways to be able to handle them, because, I don't know how, I don't know how I would have handled not being able to have somebody with me, especially with my traumatic thing that was going on. I mean, I just can't imagine that. So just getting the support when you can, and making sure that you're asking for help. I mean, that goes across the board for anybody. I'm terrible at it. I've gotten a lot better. But asking for help. And even that was hard in the first, because you didn't want people coming into your home who, I mean, I'm talking pre-vaccination, all that stuff, before there were any measures really put in place. But yeah, I mean, yes. So to answer your question, frankly, yes, it has increased. There are so many more people that have experienced some sort of mental health issue that likely may have not have had experienced one, and it's simply because of COVID and just the experience that they've had, that they really didn't think. I mean, no one was prepared for that. There would have been no way to prepare for that. And it hurts my heart that, there's going to be people that end up not getting help and not realizing how traumatic that experience probably was for them. And so I tell them, look, it might not have felt traumatic, but I mean, that it's going to come up. So just, start talking about it, your feelings as they come about. I'm all about, just tell me how you feel. Just tell me how you feel, and find somebody who will listen, not talk back to you, but just listening is a really hard. People think they're good listeners, but they're not. You have to be a good listener and just listen and repeat back to them some of the things that they've said, so they know you're listening to them, and help them, help them how you can. And that could be especially for a new mom. Now, I mean, hopefully if she's allowing people in the house, that could be just doing her dishes, or, holding the baby while she takes a shower. I mean, these are things that we're not able to really accomplish when we have a newborn. And so those simple things can be just the best thing for not just new mom, but a new family. It's really hard for the whole family unit sometimes to adjust to having a newborn, despite COVID and all that other stuff that's going on too. But yeah, talk about your feelings, find support, and get the help if you need it.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. And my mom is going to come on. Yeah, this is my mom.
Hi, Jennifer. Hi. I just applaud you. I am so touched by your story. I never walked that particular road, but I'm almost 79, and my road was from abuse, and it was silent topic. And what I admire about what you're doing and what you've done, I would love to say that your documentary would become obsolete, but it never will. I really don't believe it ever will, because there is so much pain, so much hidden pain, so much silent pain, even today. And I was in my late 40s. Ruth was in the first grade when my journey began, and it began when I divorced my husband, and I didn't know what my world. I didn't know what was causing my pain, and it was a long road, many years of on that journey. Our marriage is later restored, which was beautiful, but And now, but as I'm thinking, as I listen to your story, is now Ruth and I are walking through a more mental illness with my husband has Alzheimer's. And in the last month, we've seen him go from 79 years of age to 5. Still remembers us, which I'm thankful for. But it is a very silent road. People, I mean, so many loving people, and so many of my, so many of our tribe are wonderful, and they're there, and they're encouraging, and they are supportive, which I'm so thankful for. But it is a very silent road. It's a very lonely road in those moments in the middle of the night, and those moments when you just want to scream. And so I applaud you for what you're doing at such a young age, to have stepped out and do what you've done for community, for women. And I just pray and hope and pray that other people will be brave like you did to address more, different mental illness issues, and what the road was like for them, and the journey, and what they've learned, and how you can help, how we can help and support one another. So that's really, I don't have a question. I just wanted you to know how much I just appreciate what you, all the time and energy and effort and expenses that you went through to produce this, because I know mental illness is a silent topic. And I know Ruth, just personally, even with her ex-husband, the mental illness is what destroyed their marriage, and he refused help. And so, and consequently, her daughter doesn't know her dad. There's not that. And I mean, there's so many other issues all wrapped up into mental illness. And so I just thank you. That was really, I wanted to say to you, just thank you so very much for being willing to put it out there and be vulnerable, because you must be vulnerable to do what you've done.
Your words are so kind. Oh, thank you so much. And I'll keep you in my prayers too. That's a difficult road. And you nailed it with in the middle of the night, when things are going, my daughter's on the autism spectrum. She'll never be independent. She will be with us forever. And that is also a very, very lonely road. And I will tell you that for me, finding people that are on that same road has been very helpful. I have friends in my life that have children that will never leave their home. And that was really important for me to find, because coming to the realization of that was really hard. It was really hard. Just knowing that I'll never be a grandma. I'll never go wedding dress shopping with my daughter. I'll never experience a lot of the things that I have other friends that are so excited to experience with their daughter. And so finding very specific either support groups. And that is the one plus of social media, is being able to connect with community anywhere. And so I know that there's specific support groups for families that are going through dementia with a loved one. And that can be really comforting, even though they're a stranger. Man, when you have someone else who's dealing with things in the middle of the night, and just even hygiene for someone who, is now, in their adult body, but you had mentioned that he's like a 5-year-old. I mean, those things are tough. Those are really tough things. And so power to you for I know for caregivers, it's so exhausting. And so I pray that you have the strength, to do it day after day with a smile, and I'm so happy that he knows who you are still, because that is hard too. But I appreciate you so much. Thank you for those kind words.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Mom. Yeah. That was great to have my now you see why I am who I am. It all goes back. It really does so much go back to her I mean, I realize there's other people who've been a part of it, but that's where I came from.
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you hear
Hi,
me?
Paula.
Hello. You actually kind of answered my question already with that last from Neva. I was going to ask you, how old is your daughter now? I have a grandson. There are different types of autism, and I have a grandson who has autism. And we have our trigger days, we have our very good days and everything, but has it gotten easier for you, or is it just as hard as day one?
So she's 12. She was diagnosed when she was just about to turn 3. And so I don't know. I mean, things are definitely easier. I would also say that they're very different now than they were when she was first diagnosed. My Allie doesn't have a lot of expressive language. So she's for the most part nonverbal, but she can request things. She can tell us her needs. And she's very good receptive language. So she understands what we're saying. If we say, hey, go get your shoes on, or hey, what do you want for dinner? And I usually give her 2 choices and she picks one. But I would say the really hard things now, and this was just recently actually, I could just tell she wasn't feeling well, and she cannot tell us what she's feeling. Mm-hmm. She can't point. We've tried to be like, if your tummy hurts, point here. If your head hurts, point here. And so in that sense, she's still very much like an infant, having an infant and going, okay, they're crying, so let's go through the whole list. Do they need their diaper change? Are they hungry? Are they, what is it? And so we almost have that list for her where it's like, I don't know, we don't know. And so we really use our gut to say, you know what, she was kind of going like this, so let's just give her some Tylenol. I mean, it's a guessing game. And so for us, that's really frustrating. We're working on it right now for her to be able to identify emotions, which is a really hard thing to teach somebody. I mean, for a typical person, that's intuitive. We know, and we learn from other people. We model behavior. That's how we learn, right? Mm-hmm. And she never did that. So that's been tough. And just kind of figuring out long term, we're lucky enough, she's in a special needs school down here. I'm in South Florida. And I don't know if I have any golfers here listening, but Ernie Els is a professional golfer, and his son is autistic, and he built a school about 45 minutes from our home. And so we drive her to school 45 minutes every day, 100% worth it. And so she's able to stay there until she is 23. So we use that as a map to say, okay, and in this year, this is when I'm, quitting my job, my job that pays the bills, not the podcast. And then, and what are we going to do? I have a couple ideas for us to figure out what we can do to work together and volunteer and have her help me with things. But I think that conversation and what will happen when my husband and I get old and, and we're not here anymore and have no one to take care of us, who's going to take care of her. And, those are those difficult conversations. I think about them every day, not as intense as some days. Sometimes they make me cry. Sometimes I almost smile because I am going to have my best friend with me forever. And that too is also beautiful. So it's tough. It's really tough. And so anyone who has a child with a special need, a disability or whatever, so much applause to you, because it is tough. It's really tough.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Paula.
Yeah. This has been absolutely amazing, Jennifer. We have covered so much of this. In fact, I'll tell you, this is probably the closest to, if I would envision the kind of podcast, the kind of conversation I want, yours is probably right in line. I mean, this is why I do it. This is what I want. It was always a dream to have. Yes, I love the actors, and yes, I want to bring them on. I love that. But I also just want people to be able to share their story, and having you share as openly and authentically as you did, this is why I do it. I mean, this goes back to this is why, and it's just so thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
I'm just this one really meant a lot to me, and I know it's been a lot to everybody who is here, and it's going to mean a lot when I'm able to get it out there and people are able to listen to it. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for giving me the platform and having me. I was so excited to talk with you today. It's so nice to be on the other side of the microphone, the other side of the Zoom. So absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Jennifer and Ruth. I really, really love this conversation.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad.
All right. Well, all of you have a great week, and thank you all again for being here, for your support, and we'll see you later.
Awesome.
When I said this was a powerful conversation, I honestly believe that's an understatement. Jennifer blew me away with her willingness to share, her authenticity, and her phenomenal command of the screen. Yes, her podcasting and reporter experience definitely came through. And I just want to thank her for being so willing to be here and be such a role model for other women and an inspiration for other women going through things, whether it's postpartum depression, mental illness, or whatever it might be. She gave all of us in this world hope by the words that she was willing to speak forth. I want to thank you, my listeners and viewers, for listening, for watching, and many of you are following me, rating and reviewing. Please do that if you want to hear more of these kinds of conversations. Join my Facebook group. I'd love to have you as a member of my Facebook group so that you can stop on by and be a part of my virtual audience. I am blown away by your support. And I look forward to our next time when you will have the opportunity to spend yet another time with me and with my amazing guest, whomever that should be. Thank you all for your support, and God bless you.